Okay, so thank you for having me here today. My name is Hannah Bihun, and today I'm going to present a little snapshot of the work that I did for my honors thesis that was looking at the role of civil society organizations in addressing food insecurity in Winnipeg and opportunities within these models of food access for more just and sustainable food systems. So I'll begin by talking about waste, food waste more specifically. Food waste occurs at all levels of the food chain in Canada and has social and environmental implications as the relatively whimsical needs of consumers are prioritized over the well-being of environment and society. I'll end by talking about possibilities to begin to address these systemic issues that continue to marginalize the needs of vulnerable individuals in our society by denying access to basic necessities, including food, despite an abundance of wasted food. In fact, Canadians waste around $31 billion worth of food each year. So I began this process by asking myself why that food waste is a problem and how it relates to food insecurity. And what I found is that issues around food waste are threefold. First, our food systems are becoming more globalized as populations are moving from rural to urban settings, resulting in a greater dependence on globally traded food. As a result, we're more susceptible to the fluctuating prices and volatile prices of globally traded foods. Second, consumers in developed countries are accustomed to endless diversity in kind and uniformity within the kinds of food they wish to purchase. This pushes retailers to overstock and increases the global demand for food, which requires water, land, and energy resources to produce and transport. Additionally, without any real food disposal regulations or composting programs in cities across Canada, that food then goes on to produce greenhouse gases in the landfill. Finally, the increased demand for food results in those volatile food prices, which in turn limit the purchasing power of lower income individuals. As you can see, I've just gone from talking about food waste to social justice, and what I found is that those two concepts are much more linked than one might think. Achieving food security is not possible without also addressing the exorbitant amount of waste that is wasted on a daily basis in the country. Furthermore, the Government of Canada has actually recognized food as a basic human right since 1948, when the country signed on to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And despite this recognition of food as a right, the state has failed to provide adequate access to healthy and nutritious food for all. In the 1980s, in the midst of a recession, the Government of Canada diverted the responsibility of addressing food insecurity to civil society organizations as a temporary solution to the increased food insecurity felt across the country. However, it's decades later, and thousands of people across Canada are still relying on community-run food programs for assistance. In Winnipeg, many people are experiencing food insecurity every day, and there are a number of soup kitchens, food banks, emergency food pantries that are powered by nonprofit organizations and dedicated volunteers that are there to address these needs. However, the types of foods that are offered are often shelf-stable foods that do not provide a lot of nutritious value. So to better understand these issues around food insecurity and food waste, I conducted 14 interviews at Oak Table Inc., which is a local outreach site in Winnipeg's Osborne Village neighborhood that provides 1 meal a day, 4 days a week for an average of about 120 people a day. And what makes Oak Table interesting is that they have managed to develop a number of relationships with local food retailers and restaurants and bakeries to receive donations of would-be wasted food. And they've even managed to develop a relationship with their local grocery store to receive daily donations of fresh produce. Participants assured me that this produce is still in great condition, but due to arbitrary best before dates, it's about to be thrown out. So prior to receiving these donations, Oak Table relied on volunteers to collaborate and bring in a snack or a meal each day. And now that they're able to bring in enough food donations to prepare their meals in-house each week, they've gone from serving coffee and donuts to serving a balanced meal. Oak Table tracked their food use for a year, and they found that they would need to spend at least $110,000 annually in order to provide the standard of nutritious meal that their clientele has come to rely on. So although the volunteers no longer supply the food, they do source, manage, prepare, and distribute the food. And there are a number of challenges associated with relying on donations and volunteers to do this important work. Consistency, reliability, and storage of donations were issues identified by participants, as they just never know what's going to come through the door each week. When asked how much of the food they receive would end up in the garbage, all of the volunteers and staff agreed that most, if not all of it, is on its way to the landfill. So in this way, Oak Table is making a great contribution to food waste management in their neighborhood. And I mean, you can just imagine the possibilities if more grocery stores and restaurants and bakeries donated their surplus to help feed individuals in their neighborhood. Participants emphasized the significant impact that this food waste has at Oak Table. For people on low income or social assistance, it helps supplement their weekly food budget and also helps to provide a healthier meal than they themselves might be able to provide for themselves and their family. And for people who are homeless or experiencing extreme poverty, sometimes those 4 meals are the only sure food that they have in their week. So the people accessing Oak Table come from a variety of backgrounds. Some are homeless, some are experiencing poverty, some living with mental illness or PTSD, some are newcomers to Canada. But what's most striking during my time at Oak Table was the sense of belonging and community that you see in each of these individuals. These community organizations do have an important role in creating safe and inclusive spaces for people in our community, but their role should not be to source and provide food for those who would otherwise have very limited or no access to food. Oak Table does not purport to be the solution to food insecurity in Winnipeg, yet the need for their services continues to grow. The current charity model of addressing food insecurity does not adequately fulfill the human right to food. I believe that government and policymakers have an opportunity to learn from these civil society organizations and provide the funding and support needed to transform these spaces into real food access sites that not only divert food waste from the landfill, but fulfill the human right to food. Thank you.